You are now watching Footy Prime, the podcast, hosted by Danny Dicchio, Craig Forrest, and James Sharman.
It is episode 12 of Footy Prime. Hello there, football fans. Whether you're listening or watching us, thanks for sticking around for this new endeavour the last number of weeks. This will be our last podcast of the year. Had them going there for a bit, didn't I? They're like, oh, well, about bloody time. It's just terrible. Finally, they're finding some sense of normalcy and quitting this horrible project of theirs. James Sharman, Craig Forrest, Danny Dicchio not here today, on vacation. So Dan Wong jumps in off the keyboards into the lead mic.
Demand.
Hey,
Yeah,
Dan.
I'm filling in for Dicchio is a tough one.
I
don't have the bald head. That
not
really
yet. Give it time.
Really difficult accent. What is it? East London or
Oh, he's like a bastardized London like myself,
Right.
now, like, because he's been here so many years.
right? It's still he has some words.
He does.
Last week I was saying when he says 3, it sounds like free to me. So I was thinking on our next.
It's spelled F-R-E.
Yeah, and so I was thinking throwback Friday instead of throwback Friday, Thursday. I mean, so that's what I think he should be running
He's
with.
also a H'er, not an H'er.
Right.
I hate the H'er. You don't say H, do you?
No.
So what do you mean?
You know H, the letter H.
Yeah.
Right. In England, it seems certain people like Danny will pronounce it H, which kind of makes sense given that it's H, right?
Yeah.
But it just drives me crazy. It seems very. It's what the scum. How does scum
Right. That's
use
unacceptable.
It?
He's unacceptable.
He's unacceptable. Yeah, Danny is scum.
He's a character on Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
That's right.
Isn't he?
That's right.
He would have been a great pickup, like Vinnie Jones.
Vinnie Jones is best mate.
Jeez. Did you know Vinnie Jones?
Not really. I mean, a little bit, but not played against him several times.
Right. And was he as elbowy and is he a tough
Oh yeah.
mofo?
Oh yeah.
I don't think I've ever used the term mofo in my life.
He
but-
wouldn't last 30 seconds in the modern game. He'd be sent off.
Really?
Yeah. Some of the challenges are ridiculous.
And we should track them. We should find the Vinnie Jones top 5.
There's some
tackles.
horrendous challenges, which were like good for yellow cards back in those days. Whereas now you get banned
Well, didn't he
nowadays.
Liverpool FA Cup final? Didn't he take out McMahon?
Was it Stephen? Yeah, it was.
And I'm not sure he even got booked.
Yeah,
He took him out at the knees.
yeah, from nowhere, like 2 feet.
Yeah.
It's just horrendous. And he did get fined in the 80s for releasing a DVD.
Right.
Or a video, I guess, back then, right? The dark arts of football, how to cheat in football, basically.
Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a Don Cherry Rock'em Sock'em Roll.
It'd be things like when a guy's on the ground and you're helping him up, you just grab him under the armpit and grab hold of his armpit hair and just yank him up. So to the referee, you're doing him a favor, but actually you're not. You're being a complete bastard.
And then you get a reaction from the player.
Fucking
I'll just help him up.
awesome.
Well, he grabbed, there's a picture of Gascoigne,
Yeah.
and Vinnie Jones is in front of him, and he's reaching behind him, and he's got his whole lunch kit in his hand.
Oh, it's iconic, this picture. You haven't seen it before?
No.
It's oh yeah.
I'll find it for you right
All
now.
right. Well, no, you tell me where to find it. I'll put it on there and we'll put it up.
Gascoigne's
When you do the
face.
intro, when we get through this 17-minute intro of us indulging in our
Just
talking about
Google
packages.
Gascoigne, Vinnie Jones, it'll come up.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
It's an iconic
All right,
image.
let me find it and I'll pull it
it's
up.
an iconic picture.
My sister had no interest in sports at all. Had that poster on her wall, actually. Back at
Because
school
she liked
many
another
years ago.
man grabbing another man's
Must have been
package.
that, yeah. It must have been. But it was classic. It really was.
What's your sister's name?
Penny?
I like Penny.
So listen, we're going to talk later on today. To speaking of icons, an icon in Canadian football, a former Canadian international, head coach, MLS head coach, Premier League player with Ipswich, Craig's old teammate Frank Yallop will join us later today. But as I mentioned, it's the final podcast of the year. These guys are all buggering off over Christmas, but it's been a lot of fun so far. So we thought to start today, we'll look back a little bit on the year that was and pick a couple of storylines that perhaps transcended the soccer world here in Canada. Craig's looking a little bit mystified. Do you think he's hearing this for the first time?
No, a second.
A second time?
Yeah.
First time being about 5 minutes ago?
Correct.
Have you had a chance to think about this?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what
CPL
story?
all day long.
Yeah.
In Canada?
Well, just in general. I mean, like for you, I mean, it could be CPL's a very good one.
Yeah. Well, that and maybe what's in the news a lot with the Premier League right now and Liverpool, the way they're leading the Premier League, is quite sensational.
Well, Dan, as a newbie to soccer, essentially, is what you are.
Yep.
Is there a story that stuck out to you as the newbie Canadian soccer fan?
Look, I'd be remiss not to mention Liverpool at the top because James Sharman talks about Liverpool at the top all the time.
It's not through any kind of bias,
right?
What it is.
No, but I think the inaugural year of CPL, the fact that they have a broadcast deal with Media Pro on One Soccer, correct?
Yes. Spanish company.
I think that's a big deal, especially for homegrown soccer, homegrown footy, whatever we want to call it. And the fact that Team Canada did beat the U.S., that was a big story. We were at the game. Yeah. Big story, big game. And then just on the broadcast level, going on the media side is, once again, we were just chatting about it, but the CBC picking up the finals of the Forge and Calgary. That, whether or not it continues, the fact that they made that choice to put on their airwaves of homegrown Canadian soccer and actually brought Craig on to do the analysis with Andy Petrillo, CBC.
And Scott Russell.
And Scott, right. So whether or not it continues, I don't know. And will it continue? I guess that's the bigger question.
Well, yeah, that'd be a bigger question for CBC and the league as well, whether they agree to go that route. It was interesting that the model with the national team and them having the rights as well, once Media Pro, that they decided when they played the second U.S. game that it would be put on a pay-per-view channel but free.
Right.
So trying to expand the viewership, because putting soccer behind a paywall at this stage in this country is a difficult task. You got the diehards will absolutely do it.
Yeah.
We'll see them do it with DAZN and the Premier League and the Champions League. But for the growth of the game, I think it's imperative that people can find it easily and for free at some level for the growth of it.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's another app, One Soccer, that owned by Media Pro, and it's $75 a year.
Right.
So that's it's just another app that costs money, and it's difficult to get people on it. So for the growth of the game, difficult, new era, we've seen with the media, but also fantastic that Media Pro is part of the broadcasting and putting money into it is a massive deal for a league that just started this year.
Right.
I think all this stuff, it gave the game a relevancy in Canada, right? The CPL's been discussed for years and years and years, and we had Victor Montagliani on 2 weeks back, and he was saying that every nation, whether it's the Premier League or the CPL, needs a domestic league. You just have to have it.
Right.
And he talks about how we've now become a soccer nation. I'm not sure I agree with that just yet. I think we're getting there. We're on the cusp, but I don't think we're there just yet. But hey, who am I to disagree with I guess the president of CONCACAF? But I just think that the fact that we have now a domestic league to talk about, whether it's great, whether it's average, whether it's poor, it doesn't matter. We have it, and there's an interest there, an appetite for it, clearly, with CBC jumping aboard this past season.
Right.
And Soccer Nation, that's a tough one to call. I would say that certainly in the sporting landscape in Canada that there's room for it. I think that's what we saw when MLS came into Toronto, first of all, with Toronto FC. People were like, well, how can they challenge against the NBA and the NHL and Major League Baseball? And it wasn't so much challenging, it's that there's room on the landscape for it, and it's proven that that's the case, and there's an appetite for it, and they've been hugely successful. So some big jumps there and some positives in the media landscape as well as on the field.
Okay, so which are the big four sports, right, in Canada, right? So you got hockey, obviously, baseball, football, be it NFL or CFL, basketball. Which is most concerned about the growth of soccer right now? Who's most susceptible to being replaced by soccer in that top four?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well,
I'd say baseball, wouldn't you? Isn't baseball trending older and older, it seems?
Baseball is definitely trending older.
They're trying to get younger, but
here's the thing. A couple of years ago when Batista, we had at Eggplant Picture and Sound, people were like, "Hey, we want to." They had those afternoon games. Can we get our work done? Can we push back? We had the game on streaming.
But that's not baseball. That's the Jays.
That is the Jays. Look, baseball is one of the craziest sports. I don't know. It's the fact that they don't have a salary cap. It's rich teams getting richer. It's a lot like
there's luxury tax. There's luxury tax, Dan.
Yeah,
the Yankees adhere to that.
No one gives a shit about it. That's the problem.
Unless you're
Oakland,
the Jays
do.
Teams like Oakland that actually receive.
That's it.
The tax.
That's right. The game, baseball has less players. The one that's in trouble is football. Just period is football. Just because head injuries, it's not part of the fabric, even though TSN does well with their CFL ratings. And they're such hardcore traditionalists. And look, I played Canadian football until I was 24. This was, it was great and it was exciting. The problem is it's only growing in certain places. So Quebec, CFL is still really big on it. And there's more and more Canadian guys going down to the States and playing in the NFL. That's the other thing. So it seems like baseball...
Is that going to help Canadian football, though? Yeah. Guys from here playing south of the border. Is that helping CFL? It's not, right? On the contrary, it's going to actually diminish the importance of CFL, isn't it?
Yeah, and
more and more.
I was also thinking, what is success then? Like, is it if soccer, Canadian football / Canadian soccer, got up to where CFL numbers are, would that be success?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, bang on.
So maybe the model should be not, they play at the same times. They're like, that's the problem. They play around the same time.
Yeah.
There's only so much, consumer dollars that are out there and fan dollars. But I would argue it's some of the same base that would go, I like both these things. And if you're making them choose, not that CFL is going to change their schedule, but I was thinking about what is that, if Canadian soccer got to those numbers, it would be seen as a success. So as CPL grows,
and those numbers with a young demographic too,
right?
Like soccer's a younger demographic. With the numbers, like they can get 400, 500,000 for a CFL game on TSN. Those are massive numbers.
Yeah.
Curling, massive numbers in Canada.
Right.
But they don't generate much money because the advertisers are advertising it to old people, and they don't want that. They've already decided on what car and brands that they've already decided on. So,
but they do sell cable subs, right?
Yeah. Which is worth what nowadays, though? As all the networks are slowly but surely moving to the streaming side of things, right? I'm going to be dropping my cable pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I'm not alone there. So many people have.
So my folks that are out in New Brunswick, they only know cable. They don't know how to set up the internet. And my dad passed, but my mom, we kept it running for her because we tried to get her to learn how to stream something. And it was, teaching her hieroglyphics that we don't understand either.
Try doing that with your parents over the phone.
Oh, my God. It's a nightmare.
Actually, in fairness, I'll give my old man's given credit. He's a bit of a tech geek, actually. He's 75 now. And
that's good.
He's probably more well-schooled than I am, actually.
Yeah. That's a rarity.
It is rare, yeah. But it's about the CFL, Canadian soccer kind of model, would that be a success? There's no surprise that a lot of the CFL names, Scott Mitchell, Bob Young, are of CFL background.
That's right.
And now jumped aboard the CPL train. And across Canada, you're seeing that with ownership groups. So I think they saw that. There's definitely a model there. But like you said, the demographic is so different. So the potential for soccer is so much greater than CFL. I mean, Toronto aside, Toronto CFL is insignificant. Right? Maybe with pinball coming back, it will change a little bit. Success breeds success. But, does the CSA or Canadian soccer really care about having a big market in, I'm not being harsh here, but New Brunswick or Saskatchewan?
Right.
They probably should do, but I don't know if they do. They want to see the big markets succeed. don't they?
Oh yeah, they do. They absolutely do. I mean, it's with the CPL too as well in Canada, the challenges of having a league like this, say, in England, when you can jump on a bus and travel a few hours to a game. Mm-hmm. So the costs are massive, and you got a game. What is it? Third or fourth longest game, domestic game in a league.
Halifax to
Victoria.
Victoria, yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. And it's tough and expensive to get around.
Expensive to get around.
Yeah. And that's one of the hardest things with the development in this country is trying to get teams, the very best players playing against the very best players. And how do you do that? Because, to travel, even Danny Dichio with his Toronto team, they're traveling down to the States, they're traveling all over the place to try and find competition that will raise the level of their own players.
Right. And I mean, it's funny too, we have the Canada Games, big amateur from, 14 to 19-year-old amateur players of all sports getting together. But it always ends up Ontario, Quebec, and BC in the finals. Mm-hmm. And unless it's maybe a curling or maybe I don't know if they have that but as soon as it's team sports, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, these teams are getting crushed. Mm-hmm. And it's ridiculous. It doesn't help the Nova Scotia does all right, but most of these teams are getting crushed. And what does it do for an Ontario competitive team to go and beat the crap out of when they could be playing across in Flint, Michigan, or in...
Well, we saw Halifax with Stephen Hart this past season have a tough time in their first year in the CPL. Well, I think 16 players are not returning next season, so it's very much a work in progress. But they did really well in the stands, right? Good crowds came out to watch the Wanderers play.
Right.
So perhaps, on the flip side, the smaller markets will be successful because there's less options and choices for the sports fan out there to watch.
As well as the setup there is excellent. You got restaurants and bars and things like that. They're really close by. Like the Toronto FC situation, where you got that culture around the stadium where you can have some fun and make it part of the actual day.
Yeah, make it more than just about the 90
so
minutes.
Location's an important spot as well. I mean, look at MLS, some of the locations aren't very good. Chicago, for instance, is way out of downtown Chicago in a really bad area. Not a fun place, so you got to really, really want to go. You can't just sort of get off a subway and go to the game and enjoy it, get involved, have some fun. It doesn't happen. You're into Chicago, you're into the stadium, and then you leave right after. So location's a massive part of it, and giving those fans an opportunity to really enjoy the whole day as opposed to
make
just
it a
the
festival,
destination.
a daily festival, right?
Yeah.
More than just the game itself.
Right.
I mean, that's what TFC did so well, right? It became a party culture for young people. That's how it started out. And a lot of people in that first year were discovering soccer for the first time, but they loved a good party. And here we are now, over 10 years, 12 years later, and they're still there. Yeah. And now they're football fans. Yeah. Now they're sophisticated, intelligent football fans, and they've learned the game through TFC.
And
how great is that?
If you were going to ask me how many fans are going to be at an MLS final, and you said 70,000, I would have been. It's never going to happen.
Well, I mean, those Atlanta, they're incredible
even
stories.
5 years.
And in Atlanta, where that was, Atlanta's not the great sports town as far as and there's reasons around that. I think a lot of people from Atlanta aren't from there, so they'll go support other teams that come there, but not Atlanta fans. Right. But when they brought the MLS to Atlanta, it was one of those where a lot of people in Atlanta, they didn't have a soccer team to support, never supported one before.
Yeah.
So they really grasped it and was really part of it, and has continued to be an amazing story in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Well, TSN did a great piece on that actually around the MLS Cup final, talking about why is it successful there. And I forget who it was. It's one of their CFL analysts. He lives down there. Is it Milt Stegall maybe? I could be wrong. I forget now. Anyway, he lives down there. He explained why it was so big. He goes, his kids are now playing soccer and are season ticket holders going to that game because it's their own. And like you said, so many outsiders in Atlanta. This is actually something that's been born while they've been there. It's there. They've got ownership over this thing. Mm-hmm. Who's the other analyst? It may not be Milt Stegall.
I remember Drew Carey in Los Angeles. He's in Seattle now, but he got into it when he was in Los Angeles and went to see the LA Galaxy game. Really loved it, and being from Cleveland, couldn't support an NBA team in LA, couldn't support a football team, right? So he's just like, well, I can't support a soccer team in Los Angeles. They are my team. I don't have an MLS team in Cleveland. So he really became to love the sport and everything that was the sport, even behind the scenes when he studied Barcelona, and there these different types of models that really make the fans feel part of the fabric of the club. And they've done a great job. When he went to Seattle, was part ownership there, and it brought that into play.
That also gives us the segue to an open invitation to Drew Carey to, hey, Drew, come on to Footy Prime.
We should actually
Come on down.
Come on down. Fly in on your jet.
How many times do you think Drew hears that each week, eh? At a restaurant, a boy, hey, Drew, hey, Carey, come on down.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
But
Bob Barker was the man.
Did he die? He died, right? Is that why? Or did he die?
Did Bob Barker?
Is that why Drew Carey's now the man?
Well, he's not.
Are we playing? Is he dead yet?
Okay, next name, Danny Dicchio.
No, he's alive still. We just heard from him.
Well, we haven't checked the news.
Bob Barker, is he dead? All right.
He was dying, wasn't he?
Well,
wasn't he really sick?
You know what?
No.
We've got this thing called the interweb that maybe we can figure out.
So that's The Price is Right, right? I get all those shows mixed up. Family Feud, The Price is Right, Jeopardy. I get them all mixed up. I'm not really a game show guy myself. But it's amazing that here we are, we're 20 minutes in and we're talking about the big stories in football this past year, and we haven't really swayed from the Canadian story. And I think we will look back on 2019 as a defining year with the CPL being born. Obviously, the win against the States, Alphonso Davies not only making a move to Bayern Munich, but becoming a first-teamer at Bayern Munich when we all thought that he would be loaned out at some point. And he might still be, who knows. But right now, he's been designed into a fullback, and he's doing very well, even though Bayern aren't having a great season.
No, I watched him play the other day, and he's comfortable. He's comfortable in that environment. He's not put off by the size of the club, the players around him. It's something else. The first bona fide superstar, megastar, could be Alphonso Davies coming from Canada. Like, he has got the talent to do whatever he wants in the game.
All the respect thrown out there to Jonathan David, who just won the CSA Player of the Year.
Right?
Congratulations
to him for that. He's had a terrific season as well, with over 20 goals scored in Belgium, and with the national team, excellent. And if they don't make the Hex, with all the teams that they're going to play, he could score 10 goals from the national team.
Yeah, he could do. Absolutely.
I mean, they could end up getting a bunch of punchbag teams, but he's going to set records in just a few years.
Well, it's a great segue, I think, to our guest today, stepping into room 442. Our guest today not only played for Canada over 50 times, he coached the national team, he's coached in MLS, he was David Beckham's first manager in MLS, and a former teammate of our very own Craig Forrest. It is, of course, Frank Yallop. Frank, welcome to Footy Prime.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
So listen, we're just talking about this past year, in fact, in Canadian soccer, with the CPL being born, Alphonso Davies making the big move to Bayern Munich, the men's team beating the States, more and more emerging stars in the women's game. Has it been, do you think, a defining season for Canadian football? I mean, you know more about the sport in this country than most.
Yeah, no, I 100% think so. If you look at the game that we did beat the States, well deserved. It wasn't a lucky result. I thought we outplayed them, and I think we thoroughly deserved that win. So, no, I think with a move for Davies going, to one of the biggest clubs in the world, it's not by luck. So I think that things are really changing. I feel good about the sort of the going forward of Canadian soccer and just everything associated with it. I think MLS is flying. I think it's opened everybody's eyes up. If you look at the three teams in Canada that are in the MLS, doing wonderfully well with crowds and following and producing players. And obviously the new Canadian League as well is been a success. So yeah, good times ahead. I'm looking forward to 2020.
Frank, I look at all the players just off the top of my head, like yourself, making a trade and done very well in the United States. Mark Watson's now moved upstairs in the Minnesota organization, general manager position. Pat Onstad's got a position down there as well. Some really good Canadian people that are working in the States. Is there room for them, you think, in Canada to make a living as opposed to having to go south to find a job like yourself?
Yeah, well, I think there is, yeah. I mean, it's just where you end up sort of working for obviously I come down to play down here, so you end up knowing most of the people in the MLS and being down here. But I think with those three teams I've said about in Canada, in the MLS, that there's, I'd love to see more Canadians getting jobs with them. There obviously is, but I'd really like to see that those teams filled up with Canadian, ex-Canadian national team players, because I feel we've got a lot to offer. We've got sort of, we'll go over it later on, I guess, but we've been sort of pulled through the ringer of being brought up as Canadian players, and this, Craig. It was almost a joke when we were going away for World Cup qualifiers. We're going to El Salvador, and they start laughing. And I'm thinking, we're trying to make the World Cup, but, your managers look at you going, where are you going? El Salvador? Well, why would you go do that? So, but now it's on the map. We got the right dates and all the things that go into it. So, yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed my time, what I'm doing in soccer. I've never had a job outside of it, so that's good so far. I'm 55, so I'm knocking on a bit, so it's been good. It's great to see Pat and Waddy and all these guys, and Nicky's been involved. There's the Dazovic. So there's some guys that have been involved and in really important positions. But I'd like to see them in Canadian teams too.
Well, you're involved, Frank, with the managing of David Beckham when he first came over, and the Beckham rule and the changes that happened within the league there. I mean, we talk about managers these days and the differences between different styles of managing, going back to when you were a player at Ipswich Town and Bobby Robson signed you as a youngster. Then Bobby Ferguson was your manager. Different type of style of managing, as we'll talk about in a bit. But the modern day, the Jurgen Klopps of the world, the Pochettinos of the world, lots of energy seems to be the way to go in dealing with modern day players. What are the challenges for modern day, and the challenges you had when David Beckham came there, when you got one player making millions and then somebody else making, I don't know what the minimum was at that time, maybe $35,000, something like that? How did you deal with that?
Sorry, Greg. Yeah, we had guys on 12,000 developmental contracts, 12,000 a year. You can imagine how that went down well, But just to start with David. When David first came over, I went over and spoke to him when he was playing for Madrid. And as much as you try to explain that, it's going to be tough, you're going to be playing with players that, not up to his standard at all, but even sort of, are pretty good. They're going to be young players, are kind of, not up to par. So try to explain that. He comes over, didn't realize the big disparity in what the level he was at to what the MLS was at that point. And not all players. He had Landon Donovan to play with, who, as we know, Landon's been a fantastic player, probably the best U.S. player so far. I think Pulisic's maybe catching him up a little bit, but Landon over his career has been great. So he had some good players to play with for sure. I just think the whole development of the league now is totally different to when I had him. We went to a hotel, I remember, in Boston, and he walked in, he went, "I'm not staying here." I was like, "Okay, where are you staying?" He ended up staying there, but he said, "I'm not eating this food, this is disgraceful, blah, blah, blah." I think he was right on the phone to the owner. So it kind of helped push things along. He said, if you want the standards to go higher, you got to have standards for the players. So, he did a good thing in those types of things. But, he walked in, it's like, I'm trying to manage everybody, and he's telling me this is garbage. It was tough. It was tough. And the big thing, really, I go back on, it was he got injured. I only had him for 6 months, but he got injured, and the league had promised everyone sort of at the tail end of the season a home game, away game for the Galaxy, a home game for like Dallas and New England and New York and all these places where David would go and play. So he got injured, so they squashed all the games into like a 4 or 5 week thing at the end of the year. So we were just traveling all over the place, and one guy said to me, he goes, "Well, you guys started a little flat in the last home game." I said, "Do you know our travel schedule?" I went over the games. I think we had it was 6 games in 2 weeks. We had Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday, and flying all over the place. It was crazy, but we got through it. He obviously really adapted in the end very well to MLS and really enjoyed it. I saw him probably 3 or 4 years after I'd left. I was at San Jose 2010. He was training at Tottenham, and I went over because I had Simon Dawkins. Anyway, I'm going off subject here, but I saw him and we caught up, and he really sort of appreciated what I did and tried to stick up for him, and vice versa. And he really enjoyed his time in MLS, and he obviously went to PSG at the end of his career and then finished up. But he was a good ambassador and really changed the game in the States, and it was a joy to coach him for that short amount of time.
It was an absolute circus around him, though, wasn't it? I mean, I remember when you came to Toronto, and then after the game, we were at some supper club downtown Toronto in a VIP area, and there was just, it was incredible to see there was 5 deep women on the other side of the rope, all trying to get close to him.
We went to, I forget who set it up, it doesn't matter, but Roots Canada wanted to have David in and do a signing, like a private signing and a blah, blah, blah. And what it was, they give each of our players a certain, like a little voucher, and a shopping voucher, so we could go and shop and hang around. And we went in we definitely went in before it opened, in shopping around, didn't really look out the window. And then by the time we'd finished, probably an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, all the players, and David obviously was in there. We go to the front door, and there's probably 1,000 people outside, all trying to see David Beckham. And right away, it was like, wow, that's unbelievable. Then we get invited to after, after dinner, after the game sort of function. I think it started about 8 o'clock to midnight, something like that. I mean, I've never seen crowds like it, and there's security, and he had one bodyguard the whole time with him, but anytime he went out, he probably had two bodyguards at all times right next to him and helping him and all that stuff, because he just had to wade through crowds because they're all trying to get a piece of David. And anyways, it was a circus.
Yeah, because I mean, in Los Angeles, when you signed, it became a entertainment story as opposed to a sports story, didn't it? So you have all the ETUS showing up there to try to do stories at the ground. It was just a zoo.
Yeah, it was all the major networks, not sports channels. You're right. I think we had 210 press applications. Well, people were there. They turned down, obviously, probably thousands, but 210 different people, not just sports, and all over the world. From Japan to China to Middle East, all over the world, and to show, to follow David and see what he's doing. And yeah, it was crazy. It really was. When we did the press conference, and I was a little bit nervous because this is going around the world, but I had to say a few words. I was like, but it went okay. I mean, you do what you do, and but anyway, I think he did enjoy his time. But I mean, the players that now have followed him, Henry, Drogba. You think about the players that we have had come over, to the North America. It's pretty amazing.
It is, and quite frankly, girls 5 deep seems pretty normal to me. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Happens every Saturday night.
Yeah, of course. But the thing is, Frank, if it wasn't for David, though, it would have been someone else, right? Someone had to kind of unlock the door to North American soccer for those big names. And, it's not as if he came, he left, and no one else came. You mentioned the big names there. We saw Ibra the last couple of years. But was that room at first fragmented? Was there problems within the room with the players making obviously far less, or was that soon rectified with either generosity or just an appreciation for how good he was?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a disparity in the league. I mean, but there's been most teams you see, a right back's not going to earn the same as a centre forward or or whatever. But there was a huge disparity, but I think the players. I mean, I spoke to them before he come over, and I said, look, he's earned what he's earned, and the reason he's doing what he's doing is because of his popularity on and off the field. But on it, he's a very, very good soccer player. If and I think once he come over and started training and playing, he was at a different level to what we've seen in the league. His passing was unbelievable. His work rate and his will to win was pretty incredible as well. And I think that was the two things I really noticed when I started training. When we started training, he was joining in and was fit. His actual work rate and his will that every single play mattered. And I think some of our players were like, wow, he does care about it. He's here to win. He's not here to just lay on the beach and pick up a paycheck. He's here to win.
Didn't he? He also took a lot of those players and the whole team to some pretty good parties with some celebrities in Los Angeles. And I think one of your players was baking groceries part of the season. You end up bringing him in for $12,000, and he's at a party with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, exactly. We did the welcome to. Yeah, I took the team to the welcome to Hollywood party, and the two people that put it on was Tom Cruise and Will Smith. So you can imagine who they invited.
Who are they? Who are they, Frank? And where did Posh play in any of this? I want to hear a Posh story.
The funny thing, we were in a limo, and I was in with myself, Karen, my wife, and I think we had maybe 4 or 5 senior players with their wives. And as we get there, there's a red carpet, there's all the photographers. So we start getting out, and you see the photographers get the cameras, and all of a sudden they just put them down and turn around. But it wasn't anyone special, obviously. But as we walked into the party, and the two people that are saying hello to them was Brooke Shields and Eva Longoria.
Oh wow!
My God!
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Amazing.
Yeah, I tried to elbow my Mrs. Karen in the shop so she could
put her in the closet somewhere.
My wife Karen ended up dancing with Tom Cruise a lot of the night, and I was going to go over and knock him out, but anyway.
And she didn't come home till the morning.
And that's how you became a Scientologist, right, Frank?
Exactly, yeah. I got it. He had his high heels on.
But Frank, as a football coach, so you're coaching, Galactico in Beckham, and also kids making $12,000 a year. Are you coaching them and speaking to them differently, or did you make an effort to speak to them very much on the same level? It must have been a tough choice to make.
Yeah, no, I've always the way I've coached is always everyone's the same on the team because everyone's got to do the same part. If David's doing his passing and all that stuff, and he's very, very good at it, there's still other players that are playing well as well. So, no, I've always just included everybody in the same breath, if you like. And I feel that if you single people out and make it easy for them, then you start to get some divisions in the squad. So yeah, a lot of times if I was going to have a team meeting, I always told Landon this was a good one. I'd say someone to Landon, like, Landon, just to let you know, in this meeting I'm going to have a little go at you, just to make sure that you're on board, because he was such a good player that I needed to make sure that the other players knew that I cared about them as well. So not have a go, but just bring stuff up in a video session that is uncomfortable for him, for Landon, but I've let him know before. And the same with David. I think that you can't treat him any differently, because that's when you get divisions, and I think that the team appreciated that.
Now, Frank, when you're rounding your career as a coach, using obviously experiences that you had when you were playing, we had some very interesting managers, probably one of the most interesting managers I could possibly imagine in Bobby Ferguson. Before that was you were signed by Sir Bobby Robson. But Fergie had some interesting ways about his managing style, and it was a fear almost that you thought you would get the best out of us by slaughtering us. And I know that for large parts of that, you were the punch bag for Fergie, and you actually managed to get through that quite well, considering how torturous I know it was at times.
Oh, torturous! Yeah. I had the best manager ever, probably in the world, Bobby Robson. And probably, I say this, probably the nicest person in soccer. I think Ronaldo, not the new Ronaldo, the old one,
the real one,
the fat one, the fat one,
the Brazilian one. One of the greatest players ever. He had him in PSV, and they said, "Who's the best coach you've ever had?" This was to Ronaldo, and he said, "Well, the best person I've ever had in football is Bobby Robson." And that, right away, I was like, you know what? That's a great statement. Forget coaching and all that stuff. He's the best person. So, That stuck with me a lot when he said that. But so Bobby was great with me. Great style, great man manager, and then obviously, and Craig, you mentioned it, is then you go to sort of the other extreme where it's fear factor, and but listen, you got to go on, you got to keep, because I wanted to be a professional soccer player and I wanted to stay at Ipswich. So guess what? I had to bite my tongue a few times and keep going. But it was tough. But
remember Terry Butcher when he was at the club? You were taking such a battering from Fergie that he said that you needed to stand up for yourself, and that happened. That happened in a training session when you did stand up for yourself. How did that go?
Yeah, not well. Basically, he said, you got to say something back. You got to kind of, try and stick up. Terry was great with me. I really, we're good friends. But he said, look, it's not all your fault, but you're letting him sort of blame you for everything. Blah blah blah. Anyways, because it started actually. Played Newcastle away. We lost 2-0. We're coming after the game, and he goes. Terry Butcher sort of. He was at fault for both goals, and Terry puts his hands up and said, "Listen, guys, sorry about that." But Bobby Ferguson goes, "It's not your fault, Terry. It's that dummy next to you. That's me." So I'm thinking, what have I got to do with this? And he goes. The reason he get those 2 goals away, he got trust you. Straight away. Anyway, that's how it started. He says, "You got to stick up for yourself." Blah, blah.
Remember Fergie as well. You'd be like, "All right, any of you go around, look at everybody in the eyes. Any of you let me down today, you'll never play for me again." And then you'd be like, "Go enjoy it, my babies."
Yeah. So he said that to me. That's the exact words he said to me. I was at Man City. I was coming on as a sub. I think we're winning 3-2. That's when Man City weren't Man City like we know. But, I think it might have been a cup game. I can't really remember, but it doesn't matter. Going for the last 15 minutes, I don't know what happened, but I was sub. And he puts his arm around me and goes, "If you let me down today, you'll never kick the ball for this club again. Good luck." Okay. That's the confidence going on there. Oh, my God. Every time the ball comes to me, I just volleyed it like 80 yards.
But do you think back, Frank? I mean, there are obviously important years for you as a footballer, right? And they don't sound that they're that enjoyable with that kind of coach. Did you feel somewhat ripped off looking back?
I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. It's like having a strict mum and dad. You don't know any difference. You just kind of get through it. I mean, we had laughs. Don't get me wrong. When he walked out of the room, we'd all slaughter him. And, but it was.
Trevor Putney. He didn't like you or Trevor Putney because you guys laughed in the morning.
Yeah, that was it.
He didn't like people that laughed.
He said that. You know what he said that to? So because this is when Bobby Robson was there, and I was a youth player, and Craig wasn't quite there yet. 84, I think, Craig, you come, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 84. So I think it was 82, and a fellow named Sven-Goran Eriksson was coaching in Sweden, and so coaching in Sweden. It's Christmas time. He's come over to watch Bobby Robson, the great Bobby Robson, managing how he does it, and so he's there for probably a week, blah blah blah. So he's going up to the lunch hour. It's called the Centre Spot. We used to go up there for lunch, and someone had bought Bobby Ferguson some golf balls for Christmas, like a Christmas present. They're sitting on the table. So Sven's up there and grabbed his lunch, and he sort of says to Bobby, "Hey, you're a golfer. Where do you play?" He goes, "I haven't got time for golf, you dummy." He goes, "This is a football club, not a golf club." And it was like, "Oh, okay. Sorry to ask." Anyways, that was the greatest Sven-Goran Eriksson, but obviously he's there to see Bobby Robson, who's the greatest manager ever. But it just shows you Bobby. He was. It's funny enough, and Craig, you can attest to this. I see him now, and he's the nicest guy in the world, Bobby Ferguson. Very nice man. Basically, when I see him, it's great to see him, and all things are forgotten.
Right now, it's a big hot topic, here in Canada, certainly about coaching and, using fear and almost bullying tactics to get the most out of players. Obviously, players have changed over the last number of years. I'm not sure all coaches have. Is there still a place for fear in coaching, or is that just from a bygone era?
No, I think it's bygone now. I think that the modern day player wants more than just forced into doing things. They want a plan of what you're thinking, for the whole team and for individuals. I get a lot. I haven't coached now for a couple of years, but just towards the end of my career, hopefully I'm going to coach again soon here. But towards the end, it was more like it was more explaining what you really want and what how a player can affect the game. It's not just get out there all the best. You've got to really plan stuff out, and they want instruction and they expect it. I think through the academies, we've really started to produce very good players, and I think that they are different to me and Craig played when it was a fear factor, and he didn't really get a ton of coaching. You got more of the coaching when it was just how we played in training, rather than video and analytics and running. And now you got a tracker on your back and all this stuff that and I think that they kind of expect that now, the modern player, and I think treating them with fear is gone, and I think that's the right thing. I mean, I didn't like it when I was playing, but I accepted it. But I think now that you're seeing a different mentality in the players.
Well, Frank, you've had a really interesting coaching career. I thought, with Canada, the national team did a really good job there under what was obviously tough conditions with the CSA, certainly. But what are you doing right now? Where do you stand right now in your career?
Yeah, so when I left the Earthquakes, I went to, just a quick synopsis, I was at Earthquakes from 08 to 13, and then I went to Chicago for 18 months, and then I wanted to move back to the West Coast, so we come back and bought a house in Los Gatos where we live now. I just wanted to settle my family down, and I took a job in Phoenix, actually, for Phoenix Rising in the USL, just to get them going. We built a new stadium, and then that was all short term. And then I took a job in Fresno in 2.5 years ago, a new franchise in the USL, which is one league down from MLS. And I was general manager, so I didn't do any coaching, which was an eye opener. So all I've known is playing and coaching. Not a fan of working in an office. Obviously you got to do it, but I'm more of a people's person. I need to be around the players. I need to be sort of on the field. And so next venture is on to Monterey in California. We're doing a new USL team in 2021, and I'm going to coach and be director of soccer. So I'm looking forward to that. Get back on the field, get back to what I think I'm good at and what I love, and I'm excited about it. So Monterey, California. So you guys should do one of your shows from down there one time.
We'd love to. Is that an invite? We're there.
We might do them all.
Yeah. Are you hiring?
Can you get on Pebble Beach?
There you go.
Can we get on Pebble Beach, Frank?
We can do it. It's probably cost you,
not for free.
$600 American now.
Hey, didn't you played with Harry Redknapp at Pebble Beach with Mark Watson? Didn't Harry Redknapp? Wasn't Harry Redknapp kept playing Mark's ball by accident?
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, he goes, shit. It was the first hole. We tee off we go. Not bad drives, blah blah. He goes, bloody hell, I got hold of that one. I'm thinking, that's what he's for. And it's like, it's like 50 yards past everyone else. I'm thinking, because Wattie's a good player, by the way.
Yeah.
So, he goes, oh, cool, I really got hold of that one, Kevin. Kevin bombed with him, and I was like, he does chuck a few F-bombs in as well, old Harry. But
I can't imagine Harry cheating or taking liberties at all. He seems like a very honest fella.
He just was not cheating. He just like, got right hold of that.
That's amazing. That's great.
I'm having the best day of my life.
What a great guy too. And he said he kept staring out at the ocean. He goes, "This is one of the greatest days ever, Frank. Thank you."
Really?
Every time I saw Harry after that, Greg, you worked with him. He's a fun guy. He was a fun guy to be around. He's got great stories. And,
amazing.
So I used to pop back to QPR when he was there and watch him training and stuff and hang out a little bit. It was good. It was good. It was a good time.
Hey, Frank, this has been a great time as well. Thanks so much for this. We really appreciate it, and we hope to get you back on the show at some point.
Yeah, anytime. No problem at all. I enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, mate. That is Frank Yallop. Frank Yallop, really, really great chat. I love the Beckham insight, by the way, because it's a fascinating time for North American football when Beckham first made the move over here. The first truly world-class name to come over here. Open
Remember,
the
they
door.
were trying to figure out a way to work it in because they had the cap and it
Yeah.
was structured that way. They didn't have any way to fix it, so that's when they made
the DP, the Beckham rule,
the
right?
Beckham rule, yeah, the designated player. That's when
And
it
as a
started.
result, in comes the Ibras and the Javinkos and the Schweinsteigers of the world, right?
Yeah.
And the league's just grown from there. I think people at first thinking, oh man, is this going to be another NASL? There were some detractors, but turned out it hasn't been. And they've grown slowly, but having those big names has helped.
Well,
I'm still a supporter of getting big names when you can.
Oh, yeah. And it didn't hurt that Posh was his wife.
Didn't hurt.
Like
Oh yeah,
that
they
just
were
pulled in
they were beyond football. It was, like I said, there was entertainment, transcendent.
Yeah.
There aren't too many transcendent sports stars, right?
No.
If you look at them, I mean, Muhammad Ali,
Yeah.
obviously, Pele,
Jordan,
100%.
Gretzky, a little bit.
Gretzky here,
Yeah. Well,
certainly in
LeBron.
Canada, not
you
globally.
think LeBron? No. globally?
He's
Globally,
I
yeah.
think globally.
Now,
Absolutely.
you know what? Maybe
Yeah.
with the rise of basketball in every other country.
Oh,
now.
But the difference between
absolutely.
Beckham and those names you mentioned, though, those other names were truly the best in their sport.
Right.
Beckham was never the best in
Yeah.
the sport.
And when I was when you think how great Gretzky was over in North America, over there, when I mentioned Gretzky, they wouldn't have a clue. Maybe have heard the name, but never seen anything, never watched any.
My sister was over here on
hockey.
vacation in '88 when he got traded to the Kings, and she came home in England and saying, "Oh yeah, this guy Wayne Gretzky was traded, and he was crying at a press conference, and it was like wall-to-wall coverage." And I'm thinking, "Who? Gretzky? What? Never heard of him." So hockey is still a speck in the sporting global
Right.
landscape. Let's
Yeah.
be honest here, despite what they might want to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not. Hey, listen, it's big in this country and good in certain countries in Europe, right? But overall, it's not. But I think the whole Beckham thing's a good segue to quickly the Champions League draw went today. Some great matchups. Man City, Real Madrid's interesting. Atletico, Liverpool terrifies me because I love Atletico. It's a great team. But European football as a whole, Craig, you played in the UEFA Cup.
Yeah.
A couple of times with West Ham or Ipswich or both.
West Ham.
West Ham,
yeah.
right?
So
So-
we finished fifth in the league, so that got us through into the UEFA Cup.
UEFA Cup, right? So still the Champions League was number one. Then UEFA Cup was a big tournament. But like, as a footballer, you're competing for the Premier League. How big a draw was it to qualify for the UEFA Cup and play in those games across Europe?
Well, I mean, we'll take a step back. I mean, when Ipswich, for instance, won the UEFA Cup back in the early '80s, that UEFA Cup at that time was massive because the Champions League, or the European Championship, was the winners, only the
Just
winners.
that. It was the champions. It was
Yeah.
knockout tournament.
So Ipswich finishing second went into. So there was a quality second place grouping of teams that went into the UEFA Cup. So it was a massive tournament. Now, when you look at 4 English teams go into the Champions League, and then you have UEFA or Europa League spots underneath that and whatnot, it's a fantastic experience, and clubs want to be in Europe, except not at the expense of losing your Premier League status. There's just so you could say, well, we've gone from an era of winning trophies, and that was the number one goal, to now you have to stay in the Premier League because devastating if you get relegated. The TV money drops significantly. Yeah, you get your parachute payments for a few years.
But do players think about this, or is this more of an ownership management level? Or as a player, are you thinking, man, it's great to be qualifying for this tournament, but we have to make sure we retain our position next year?
Absolutely.
It is
Yeah,
players too.
yeah. People know. I mean, you take it seriously to a point, and then you get more serious as the competition goes on. You see the Europa League finals now. Everybody takes them really seriously. It's a now there's also an avenue into Champions League by winning that. So that's a great addition to Europa League, to give some incentive for teams to try to go win it, as opposed to just protecting your players, making sure you keep your status in the leagues, whatever that league that you're in. So it has taken away a little bit of the shine of that tournament, for sure. Not the Champions League, but the Europa League, absolutely.
I just find it funny how managers will be fighting tooth and nail all year long to finish in 5th place or whenever 6th place to qualify for that tournament. They do everything. They talk about it. They must qualify. They then get there and then whine about the schedule for the next year.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to be in it.
And it's disruptive of
Thursday, Sunday, right?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
So why is that so difficult?
Well,
I never
because you
quite
got that
this.
extra. That's one less day to recover. So if you're playing away, say on a Thursday night, and then you got to get back Friday and prepare for a game on a Sunday, it's disruptive. Whereas you play games on Saturday all the time, or midweek, it's Tuesday or Wednesday. That Thursday throws everything a little bit out of whack, and I think it's certainly hurt teams at times.
Well, the stats speak for themselves, right? It's very difficult to play that. I never quite understood it, but yeah, you make good points there. And I always thought it was more of a social thing. It ruins your social life on the weekend because the weekend is just done. It's done, right? You can't go out on a Saturday.
There wasn't much social life when you were playing.
Oh, whatever. Come on.
No, I mean, it's honestly.
Have you ever heard such bullshit?
I don't trust him.
No.
He's untrustworthy.
Not much social life when you're playing.
Okay.
You haven't lived a real life.
We found time. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's interesting, and like I said, great games coming up in the Champions League. Decent Europa League this year too. Actually, some good teams slipping down into that tournament. So,
well, you mentioned slipping down into that tournament.
Right.
Like that's another thing.
Do you agree with that? Third place teams?
No, because I think it's about it's the UEFA and the rich teams looking after supporting the top teams. So if you finish third in the Champions League, you slip into the Europa League. I think Mourinho said it recently that he disagreed with that. Like, why should the third place
get
team
rewarded for failing?
Yeah, and then you can go on to win that tournament right into the knockout stage. So
it's a bit like Canada qualifying for the World Cup through not making the hex
through the back door.
Through the back door, right? Which we're big supporters of.
Well, then where does the FA Cup then fall? Like now you're playing these champions, like Champions League. Obviously, we all watch it. It's exciting. UEFA, that's when I kind of go, all right, as a sports guy, but not an avid footy follower. UEFA, I'll look at the scores.
Yeah.
But then the FA, and I've been over there. I was over there in the 90s, and it was one of those stories where, one of these hometown, they ended up playing Man U and getting pumped like 7-1 or 7-0. It was
best day of their lives.
But they were playing at, this little field with probably about 5,000 people around it. And I forget what that team was. What does the FA Cup fall now?
Well, that's it. I mean, if you're looking at the top teams, they have the domestic. So Liverpool, let's just say them because they're winning the league at the moment. They have the league to deal with. Then they have the League Cup.
Yeah.
And then they have the FA Cup and the Champions League. So these are all things that they have to deal with, and massive congestion in the schedule. So the only way you can compete on all fronts, well, you can't compete on all fronts, but the only way you can do it to some extent is that you have large squads to be able to, with quality, to be able to compete on all those fronts. But you have to prioritize, and first of all, the league's number one. You see younger players and opportunities where clubs will play younger players and reserve players in the other competitions, the League Cup and the FA Cup as well. So it's difficult balancing all those, but definitely having to prioritize. And depending on what club you are, Liverpool, they're going to probably prioritize the league because they haven't won it for so long.
Which makes Sharm's gonna.
Yeah, but
give him some wood.
Most clubs are like, we won the league so many times. But the Champions League is the pinnacle of all pinnacles,
right.
in football in Europe. It's the best of the best. So you have that as well. But depending on what your priorities are at that time, you just have to. I mean, I think the FA Cup has a ton of pageantry left, theater, especially when lower divisions, when there's 700 odd clubs will start the FA Cup. And this is what I think from North America too, is that if they did that in hockey and had a separate competition,
right.
So you have the NHL, the Stanley Cup, that stands alone, but then you had this FA Cup or Hockey Cup that would include 700-800 smaller hockey clubs
right.
that could maybe, if you win a whole bunch of rounds, play an NHL team at home,
right,
on a bad surface, and,
which would be amazing. But just I'd love to watch that. I mean, obviously, it would be an embarrassment.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, but would it? Because from a football standpoint, you go to one of the small grounds and it's a cow pasture. I mean, the field's a disaster. It's cut up. They don't even touch it to try to make that a bit of an equalizer, and it is. But you say to these small teams, these ice hockey teams, say you leave 2 inches of snow on that ice.
It's
Good
true.
luck.
It's true. But I wonder, is the gap between the amateur hockey player and the NHL hockey player greater or smaller than the gap between the amateur soccer player and the Premier League player?
I would think I would think it has to be similar. That on a one-off game, a team could beat an
you?
NHL team. Sure.
I just think. I mean, listen. I don't skate. I don't play hockey. You've played before. I know how difficult that is, and I know some guys who have played against pickup games with like fourth liners in the NHL, and these fourth liners just dominate. Right, they're like they're scoring 7-8 goals. And these guys are pretty good amateur players going, holy crap. It'd be interesting. I like seeing a good old beating now and again. So I'd like to see Edmonton and McDavid against I don't know my mate's local
Moose
beer
Jaw.
league
Right.
team. It'd be amazing.
Well,
wouldn't it?
and here's one of what we used to do, and when we were at Sportsnet, I know the hockey guys would go out and play. So a Kipper and a Millard played
Right.
Junior A, I think, and Kipper would go out and
Skate rings around them.
And my girlfriend at the time was a hockey player, and she just said Kipper would just because he was not only a scorer, he was a full scorer back in junior.
Yeah.
And he just supposedly the goalies were both pretty good goalies because they're both Junior A guys. But
Besides, that's easy being goalie in hockey anyway.
Well, and soccer.
Hold on.
No, I'm giving you credit. Way harder in soccer.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
But
pads.
he used to basically, she just said his shot was so strong compared to everybody else's.
Yeah.
He just, handled the puck and he would skate around people, but he also took it easy.
Right.
So it would be interesting not to see him take it easy. That.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to your point, it's like these guys are so much better. That's the thing, That's
Well, I mean,
what the respect we give
even
them.
playing soccer, right? I
Yeah.
played in charity matches and tournaments, right, with some pros and that. And I mean, I was never a good footballer ever, but you just notice the quality, the golf, and being an athlete compared to a regular dude like myself. Right, the way they run around the field, they kind of glide. Even the bad ones glide around the field, right? Whereas people like me, heavy feet, dong, dong, dong,
Well,
dong,
and
dong.
it's slow motion for
Yeah,
them.
it's slow
It
motion,
really
right?
is,
You see
yeah.
video, you're playing hard, right? And then you watch video of that occasionally, and you go, "Oh my God, I should be in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I'm pathetic out there."
You'd be faster in a wheelchair.
I would be, yeah, absolutely, right. I'm just not at the least bit,
Brendan
as
Dunlop.
athletic as I thought.
Brendan Dunlop, I tell you, he would be faster in a wheelchair.
Hunters is the world's slowest man.
He
Oh,
would be.
really?
Yeah.
Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh,
Yeah, it's proven.
Yeah.
We'd have to have him on the show again and
Yeah.
pick that
He's
up.
like a 33-second 100-meter.
Yep. Yeah. No, Dunlop. We'll talk about it when he's on next, right? He's happy to. He's he looks great out there. He's got the full. He'll get the
he's-
socks.
No, he's wearing his
socks, the
suit.
shin pads.
He's wearing one of
No
his
hair
suits.
out of place.
Alice band if he needs it. He looks amazing. Like this
Yeah.
guy is good.
But when he's running, it's like he's in
Just-
quicksand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although he's got a bit of
Treading
he's
water.
got a decent finishing touch actually. Amazingly enough.
Well, I didn't want to say it. I've been looking at his ass. He's got a big ass.
He's got a big ass.
got a
he's
big
low.
ass.
He'd be a good hockey player.
Yeah.
Low center of gravity.
He's pear-like.
Yep. Short. He's like the world's tallest midget. Oh, short legs. Even shorter than Craig's here.
Yeah.
He's all torso as well. Just get back to very quickly. Talk about schedules and FA Cups and stuff. This week, Liverpool, right? They play Aston Villa tomorrow in the League Cup final, quarter final, and then Wednesday they play against Monterrey in the Club World Cup in the Middle East. It's ludicrous, right? Two different squads entirely, give or take. It's just utterly ludicrous.
Yeah. They try to cram so much in, don't they? I mean, there's only so many days in the year, and with the amount of football these guys play, it's.
But when will it end? I don't think it will end because it's money, right? They've got to play these tournaments. They want these big clubs to play in the League Cup.
Well, for 20
and the
years, I've
Club
been
World
covering
Cup.
it after I stopped playing, and we're watching managers today, last year, year before, all complaining about it. It wasn't Wenger complaining about
Well,
it.
remember
Klopp's talking about
Fergie
it.
pulled United from the FA Cup in 2000, I think it wasn't it? After they won the
Around
treble.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were playing that
The Club
tournament.
World Cup then. And he goes, we can't do everything. Yeah. Crazy. We're out of time, fellas. The end of 2019 for Footy Prime, our inaugural season, so to speak. But we're back in the new year, so fear not. Follow us for all details at Footy_Prime on Twitter, on Instagram, and Facebook. It's Footy Prime, the podcast, as it is on YouTube. Any questions or comments, email us at footyprimepodcast@gmail.com. Our thanks to Eggplant Picture and Sound and DeanBlundell.com for helping us out with this little endeavour. It's been a lot of fun so far, fellas. A success to the point where we are going to return for 2020, at least for a few episodes.
With perhaps some sponsorship
Yes,
opportunities.
we have some
Things are
potential
brewing.
there.
Things are brewing.
So to speak, brewing, huh? And we will be having, we keep talking about it, there will be a live recording of this podcast at a local drinking establishment in the new year. So follow us on our socials for all that. So Dan Wong, great job. as
Oh,
always, stepping
thank
in
you.
for Danny Dicchio.
Happy holidays, James.
Craig, you're the best. Have a great Christmas in Vancouver.
Yes, thank you very much. I haven't been back there since 1986 for Christmas.
For Christmas, really? Is that a good or a bad thing?
We'll find out.
Families. Yes, indeed. Everyone here have a great, great Christmas. Dicchio, if you're listening, no chance he's listening. Have a good Christmas as well. I'm James Sharman, and cheers for listening and watching.
And we're out.